All right. Terminating and repeating decimals. So let's start with some definitions. Let's write this down. First of all, what is a terminating decimal? And then we'll talk about repeating decimals. So terminating decimals are, think of what the word terminate means. To terminate is to end, right? So like the Terminator, right, is his job is to end people's lives, right? So that's what he does. So he terminates. So these are decimals that end, okay? Decimals that end. What do I mean decimals that end? For example, let's write down some examples. 0.5. Notice there's nothing after the 5. Other than like zeros technically, but there's nothing after 5. It stops at 5. 0.5 and then ends. It terminates, right? A negative example would be like negative 0.28. A mixed number one would be like 6.75. Like these ones, they're done. After that last number, they are over with, finished. Okay? So that's what that means, okay? That you have a terminating decimal. It terminates, it ends. So you might say, well, Mr. Leon, isn't that like all decimals? Well, here's a non-example, just so you guys can see, okay? A really famous non-example is pi. Pi is 3.14159, and it goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. So it doesn't terminate, right? It never finishes, okay? So we like terminating decimals because they end, they're easier, right? So what about repeating decimals? Is pi a repeating decimal? Not quite. Let's talk about repeating decimals. Repeating decimals are exactly what they sound like. Decimals that repeat over and over and over and over and over again. So for example, 0.3333333, so on and so forth. This is the same thing as 1/3 actually. If you were to have a calculator and you put 1 divided by 3 in the calculator, it would be 0.333333333 forever and ever. Now, you might ask, Mr. Leong, which decimal do I go to then? I can't write forever. Well, this is what we do. We do what we call bar notation, okay? Bar notation is a way for us to write this number without writing the whole thing. So this is what it means. You write it like this, 0.3, and then above whatever repeats, you're going to put a bar, okay? So this is called bar notation. So by putting that bar, what that means is anything that's under the bar repeats itself over and over again. And this way I don't have to write any more 3s. I can just write 0.3 with a bar, and that means 0.3 repeating. Let's do another example of this. So like 0.151515, for example. If you have something like this, 0.15151515, so all you have to do is this. You say, okay, I know the 15 is repeating over and over again. I'm going to write this, 0.15 bar notation. You see how that works? How the 15 is repeating over and over again? So that's, now one thing you want to watch out for is you don't want to write that like this, 0.1515. The reason that this is wrong is because you don't need to write the extra 15. Like you don't need this part right here. That makes sense? Like we already know that 15 is repeating, so you don't have to repeat it twice. Okay? So don't do it this way, just like this. One more example, just so we make sure we got it. What if I had 5.166666666 on forever and ever and ever? What do I do? Remember, only put a bar over the part that repeats. So how would I rewrite this one? Go ahead and write it yourself. You could probably figure this out by now, hopefully. I'm going to write this as 5.16, and I'm going to put the bar over not the 1 and the 6, just the 6, right? If I put it over the 1 and the 6, then it would be 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6. Instead, I just want 5.1666666. You see the difference there? So the 1, yeah. Okay, so that's repeating decimals. Okay, so terminating decimals are ones that end. Repeating are the ones that go on forever, but we know there's a pattern at least. Okay, the other kind are like pi. So ones like pi, they just go on forever. They're not terminating or repeating. They just go on forever, never, never. All right, a bulk of our lesson, let's move on, is changing fractions to decimals. And then later we're going to change decimals to fractions. Okay. Okay, so how do I change a fraction to the decimal? Like a fraction like 3 over 8? Well, there's only one way. And unfortunately, again, no calculators on this chapter, but the way to do it is to divide. We're going to divide, and then it'll change our fraction into a decimal. So it's a simple process, it's just a little bit tedious. It takes a little bit of time. So here we go, let's divide. And that means long division. Ugh, I know we don't like it, but we gotta do it. Okay, so sometimes people get confused as to who goes in the house and who goes out. So I always think of my favorite hamburger place, which is In-N-Out. Okay, double, fries, milkshake, yeah, okay. And we think about it, and we say, okay, the 3 is in, the 8 is out. In-N-Out, In-N-Out burger, in and out, top to bottom. All right, so let's go ahead and divide here, right? We know 8 goes into 3 0 times. So I got to put a decimal here, right? Whenever time you add the first 0, put a decimal, right? How many times 8 go into 30? Okay, 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. Subtract, we get 6. I need another 0 to drop down. 60. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. There's a 4. Drop another 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times. I finally get 40, and I'm 0. Okay, so what's my answer? 3/8 is equal to 0.375. That makes sense? Right? It's just division. That's all you gotta do is division. So it takes a little bit of time, but totally doable. Okay. All right, let me have you guys try one on your own here. 3 and 5/8. I want to know what that is as a decimal. Now, the 3, don't even touch. Leave the 3 until later because you don't want to change it to improper or anything. So all you're going to worry about is the fraction part. Go ahead and divide. See if you can get the decimal. Go ahead and try that on your own. Good. Thank you. All right, I'll start doing it here. So again, I'm going to save the 3 for later, okay? So here we go. 5 goes in, 8 goes out, 0 times. I need a decimal. I get a 6. I get a 2. And I get a 5. Okay, now here's where you have to be a little bit careful. The answer is not 0.625. Now we have to remember the 3. Yeah? So the final answer, so 3 and 5/8 is equal to 3.625. That makes sense, right? Don't forget about the whole number, right? If you guys are like, hey, I have $5.25, and so can I change that into pennies? And someone says, here's 25 pennies, you'll be like, you're missing something, right? What about the $5? Right? You still need the whole number part. Okay? Sound good? Yeah. Okay. So that's just one thing to be careful of. But again, all it is division. Okay. Here's another one for you. How about this one? A negative 7/9. Try and do that one. Go ahead and divide. See what you get there. Now I'd ask you to type this one in the chat, but it's a little bit hard because you need some of you guys are noticing. You should see a pattern, right? Are you seeing a pattern? Okay. So if I do this one, here we go. I'll do a different color, a little easier to see. Again, the negative, we'll save that for the end, okay? We'll save that for later. Just remember that it's negative. That's one thing you gotta remember. The whole answer will be negative at the end. So I'm just gonna do this. 7 divided by 9. I need a 0 and a decimal. 7 times 63. 7 left over. 7 times 63. 7 left over. Okay, I'm starting to get a pattern here, aren't you? I kind of know what the numbers are going to be. Good thing we remember how to write this, right? If I know that I'm going to just get 7, 7, 7, 7 like that, I'm going to use bar notation. Okay? Bar notation. Yeah? So instead of writing it like this, I'm going to write like that. Negative 7/9 is equal to negative 0.7 repeating. Bar notation. Isn't that easier than writing a lot of 7s? Right? Okay. So all I did there was divide. Okay. And then I saw that I'm going to have all these 7s. All of these 7s over and over and over again. So that means I put the bar notation. And don't forget about your negative sign either. So what do you think? Not so bad? Just a little division? Yeah. That's it. Right? To change a fraction to a decimal, just a little bit of division. But let me tell you this. Sometimes you don't even have to do division. Let me show you where you can sometimes take a shortcut. Check it out. Sometimes there's ones that are just really easy, where you don't have to do division at all. So for example, 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10 is just 6/10. Also known as anything over 10 is just 0.6. So 7 out of 10, 0.7. 8 out of 10, 0.8. 4 out of 10, 0.4. Right? The same thing works with over 100, right? If I had like 11 over 100, that's just 0.11, right? Those are things that we need to know with decimals. Like there are easy ones that are like that. Okay. Another one that's kind of interesting, okay, is we like 10 and we like 100. Okay. We like 10 and we like 100. Let me explain. Here's an example. Let's say I had a fraction like this. 2/5. And I want to know what that was as a decimal. Well, watch this. Couldn't I just multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing? Multiply them by 2? Right? It's the same fraction, right? If I do the same thing top and bottom, then I'm okay. And that means I get 4 out of 10. Well, what's 4 out of 10 as a decimal? Right? We know that one, right? 4 out of 10 is simply 0.4. Okay. Do you see how easy that could be, right? So look, the same thing happens if we did, let's say we did 8 out of 25. Okay. Can I change 25 into 100? Yeah. Multiply by what? 25 times what is 100? All right. So let's do that. Good. Times 4, right? 25 times 4 is 100. 8 times 4 is 32. So that's simply 0.32. That's a lot easier than long division, isn't it? Right? So instead of long division, sometimes you can take shortcuts. Okay? Sometimes you can take these little shortcuts. And there are a few on the homework that are like that. Okay, last thing, real quick. So that's fraction to decimal. Let's change decimal to fraction. Okay. Decimals to fractions. This one's actually a little bit easier. Check it out. Let's say I had 8 out of 10. Oh, sorry. That's the fraction. Let me try that again. Let's say I had something like this, 0.7. Well, remember, that 7 is in the 10th place, right? So I can just write it like this. 7 out of 10. I just changed a decimal into a fraction. That's it? Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit harder. Let's do one that's a little bit harder. .15. Okay. So we got to think, which place did it go to, right? This is 15 hundredths. Yeah, you guys are putting in the chat. Good, right? So this is going to be 15 over 100. Now, we're not done, though. Can we simplify the fraction? Is there anything that goes into both 15 and 100? Yeah. What number goes in both 15 and 100? Good, yeah. So you guys are showing me, right? Okay, 5. So let's divide by 5 on top and bottom. I end up with 3 out of 20. So yeah, it's easy to set it up, and then the hard part is simplifying it down into the reduced form. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's what you have to do today, okay? The main thing on today's homework are you have to do 3 things, right? First thing is you need to be able to write in repeating decimal bar notation. The second thing is changing a fraction to a decimal by dividing or using one of our shortcuts if you're able to. Okay. And then lastly, changing a decimal into a fraction. Okay. And that's your whole thing. So we have about 7 minutes now. Why don't you guys go ahead and get started on the homework? Okay.